The Great Hall of Terminus 9 was silent. Representatives from 47 alien species sat in their assigned seats, their eyes fixed on the central platform where High Arbiter Xerax stood tall. His gray skin stretched tight over angular bones, and his four eyes gleamed with satisfaction. This was the moment his people had planned for 300 years. "Let the record show," Xerax announced, his voice echoing through the chamber, "that on this day, the Galactic Confederacy formally declares war upon the species known as humanity." A ripple of approval moved through the assembled delegates. Some nodded their heads. Others clicked their claws against their seats in applause. The Vorax delegation hissed with pleasure, their forked tongues tasting the air dot in the far corner of the hall. A single human sat alone. Ambassador Kevin Shaw was a man of 53 years with gray hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing fancy, nothing impressive. The aliens had always seen humans as primitive creatures from a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. They expected him to tremble. They expected him to beg. Kevin Shaw did neither. He listened quietly as Xerax continued his speech. The High Arbiter spoke of humanity's crimes, their refusal to share technology, their stubborn independence, their strange and dangerous nature. He painted humans as a threat that needed to be crushed before they grew too strong. "You have 30 days to surrender your military assets," Xerax declared. "Your fleet will be dismantled. Your weapons will be destroyed. Your people will serve the Confederacy as a labor class for the next 500 years. This is our mercy. Reject it, and you will face total destruction." The hall erupted in celebration. Delegates cheered and congratulated each other. They had waited so long for this moment. Humanity had always been a thorn in their side, a species that refused to bow, refused to follow the rules of galactic society. Now, finally, they would be put in their place. Kevin Shaw stood up slowly. The noise died down as all eyes turned to him. What would the human do? Would he cry? Would he threaten? Would he make empty promises? Shaw straightened his tie and cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice was steady and clear. "On behalf of Earth and all her people," he said, "I thank the Confederacy for this formal declaration. We accept your terms of war." He paused and looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every delegate who dared to look back. "And I want you all to know something. We have been waiting for this day. We have been ready for a very long time." He smiled then. It was a small smile, calm and confident. It made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Good luck," Shaw added. "You will need it." He turned and walked out of the hall without another word. The doors closed behind him with a soft click. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Xerax laughed, and the others joined him. What could one small species do against the might of the entire galaxy? They would learn the answer soon enough. 8,000 light-years away, deep beneath the Swiss Alps on Earth, Admiral Daniel Carter watched the broadcast on a massive screen. The underground command center hummed with quiet activity. Officers moved between stations, checking data, monitoring systems. But all eyes were on the screen. Carter was 61 years old, with a weathered face and sharp blue eyes. He had served in the military for 40 years, rising through the ranks not through politics but through pure skill. He was the kind of man who spoke little but meant every word. Standing beside him was Dr. Lisa Morgan, a woman with short black hair and glasses that reflected the glow of the screens around her. She was the architect of everything they had built in secret. The ships, the weapons, the plan. "They finally did it," Carter said, his voice low. 87 years, Lisa replied. "We intercepted their first war plans 87 years ago. 3 generations of scientists, soldiers, and engineers worked in secret for this moment. Carter nodded slowly. And they think we are weak. They think we are primitive. They think our planet is small and our people are fragile. Lisa allowed herself a slight smile. They have no idea what they just started. Carter turned to face the room. Every officer stopped what they were doing and looked at him. These men and women had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. But it had come, and they were ready. "Send the signal," Carter ordered. "Wake them up." Across the planet, things began to happen. In the deep waters of the Pacific Ocean, enormous hatches opened on the seafloor. Ships rose from the darkness, vessels that had never been seen by any satellite or scanner. They broke the surface and lifted into the sky, water falling from their hulls like rain dot in the mountains of South America. Entire peaks split apart to reveal hidden hangars. Warships emerged, sleek and powerful, their engines glowing with energy that alien scientists would not understand. On the dark side of the moon, a base that officially did not exist came to life. Lights flickered on across its surface. Crews rushed to their stations. Weapon systems that had waited in silence for decades powered up with a low-hum dot in the shipyards of Mars. Construction crews worked faster. The Red Planet had been humanity's secret factory for 50 years. Ships that took other species centuries to build rolled off assembly lines every month. And in Geneva, Admiral Carter watched it all come together on his screens. Hundreds of vessels, then thousands. An entire fleet that the galaxy never knew existed. Dr. Lisa Morgan stepped closer to him. "Project Sleeping Giant is fully active," she reported. "All systems are operational. All crews are at their stations." Carter took a deep breath. He thought about his grandchildren back home in Colorado. He thought about every family on Earth, every child who deserved to grow up free. The aliens wanted to enslave humanity. They wanted to crush the human spirit and turn Earth into a servant world. They had made a terrible mistake. "Open a channel to all ships," Carter said. "Let them know what we are fighting for. Let them know that we did not start this war, but we will finish it." He paused, looking at the screen one last time. The Confederacy had 47 species and millions of ships. They had conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years. They thought they were invincible. They were about to learn the truth about humanity. "The galaxy announced war," Carter said quietly. "And now they will discover why Earth smiled." Far above, the first human warships broke through the atmosphere and headed for the stars. The war had begun. The story of how humanity prepared for war began 87 years before the first shot was fired. It started with a small probe drifting through deep space, collecting data that would change everything. Dr. Samuel Hayes was a young scientist working at a listening station in Australia when the probe sent back its findings. He was alone that night, drinking cold coffee and watching data scroll across his screen. Most of it was noise, stars, cosmic dust. Nothing special. Then something different appeared. Patterns, organized signals, communication. Samuel spent 3 days decoding the transmission. When he finally understood what he was reading, he dropped his coffee cup and it shattered on the floor. He did not notice. His hands were shaking too badly. The transmission was a military plan. Detailed, precise, complete. The Galactic Confederacy intended to conquer Earth within the next century. They would wait until humanity developed enough to be useful, but not enough to be dangerous. Then they would strike. Humanity would become a slave species, their bodies put to work in mines and factories across the galaxy. Samuel reported his findings to his superiors. They reported to their superiors. Within a week, the leaders of every nation on Earth sat in a secret meeting, staring at the translated documents with horror in their eyes. For the first time in human history, the entire planet agreed on something. They would not become slaves. They would not bow to alien masters. They would prepare. And so Project Sleeping Giant was born. Captain Nathan Cole learned about the project on his 25th birthday. He was already one of the best pilots in the fleet when his commanding officer called him into a windowless room and told him the truth about the galaxy. Nathan listened without saying a word. When the briefing was over, he had only one question. When do I start training? That was 15 years ago. Now Nathan stood on the bridge of the U.S. Relentless, the flagship of humanity's hidden fleet. The ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, with weapon systems that could crack a moon in half. It had taken 20 years to build in secret beneath the Pacific Ocean. Commander Megan Torres stood beside him, studying the tactical display. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her eyes moved quickly, taking in every detail. She had been Nathan's second-in-command for 5 years. He trusted her completely. "Scout fleet incoming," she reported. 230 vessels. Standard Confederacy attack formation. Nathan nodded. The aliens had sent their scouts ahead of the main fleet, expecting to find a helpless planet begging for mercy. They would find something very different. "How many ships do we have in position?" he asked. 200 exactly. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. The numbers were almost even. The aliens would think it was a fair fight. They were wrong. "Open a channel," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the lit alien vessel. The commander was a Vorix, a reptilian creature with scales the color of dried blood. His yellow eyes widened when he saw a human warship facing him. He had expected cargo vessels, maybe a few outdated fighters. "Not this. Attention, Confederacy fleet," Nathan said calmly. "I am Captain Nathan Cole of the United Earthship Relentless. You have entered our solar system with hostile intent. You have 30 seconds to withdraw." The Vorix commander recovered from his shock and laughed. It was an ugly sound, like stones grinding together. "One ship threatens 200? The alien said. "You humans are as foolish as we were told. Surrender now, and we might let some of you live." Nathan looked at Megan. She checked her display and gave him a slight nod. Everything was ready. "You misunderstand," Nathan replied. "I am not threatening you with one ship." He pressed a button on his console. All around the Relentless, space itself seemed to shimmer. Then, one by one, human warships appeared. They had been hiding behind a new technology the aliens had never seen, bending light around their hulls to become invisible. The Vorix commander's laughter died in his throat. His tactical officer screamed numbers at him. 200 human ships. All of them armed. All of them ready. "You wanted war," Nathan said. "We have had a century to prepare. Welcome to our solar system." The battle lasted 11 minutes. Human weapons fired beams of energy that cut through alien shields like paper. Human ships moved in patterns the Confederacy had never encountered, unpredictable and deadly. The aliens tried to retreat, but human vessels were faster. They tried to call for help, but human jammers blocked their signals. When the silence came, not a single Confederacy ship remained. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers, glittering in the light of the distant sun. On Earth, Admiral Daniel Carter watched the battle footage with quiet satisfaction. Beside him, Dr. Lisa Morgan was already analyzing the data. "Their shields are weaker than we estimated," she said, "and their reaction time is slow. They fight the same way they have fought for 10,000 years, and we fight differently," Carter added. "We adapt. We improvise. We take risks they cannot understand." Lisa looked up from her tablet. "The scout fleet was just the beginning. The main force will be much larger." Carter nodded. He knew what was coming. The Confederacy would send everything they had. Thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands. They would try to crush humanity with pure numbers, but numbers were not everything. Back in space, Captain Nathan Cole looked at the debris field on his screen. He felt no joy, no celebration. War was not something to celebrate. But he felt something else. Pride. Pride in his crew. Pride in his ship. Pride in humanity. Send a message to Earth, he told Megan. Tell them the first battle is won. Tell them we are ready for whatever comes next. Megan nodded and began transmitting. Around them, the human fleet regrouped, checking systems, repairing minor damage, preparing for the next fight. The galaxy had thought humanity was weak. They had thought Earth was helpless. They had planned for centuries to enslave an entire species. They had not planned for this. Somewhere, in the Confederacy headquarters, High Arbiter Xerax received the report of his lost scout fleet. For the first time in his long life, he felt something cold settle in his stomach. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. It was doubt. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. 200 Confederacy ships destroyed in minutes. Not one survivor. Not one escape pod recovered. The humans had not just won the battle. They had erased their enemy completely. On 100 different worlds, alien species watched the footage in silence. They saw human ships appearing from nothing. They saw weapons that burned through the strongest shields. They saw a fleet that moved like a single living creature. Every vessel knowing exactly where to be and when. For the first time in galactic history, other species looked at humanity and felt afraid. Admiral Vorath was one of the most respected military commanders in the Confederacy. He had won 63 battles over his 300-year career. He had conquered 12 worlds and crushed rebellions on 20 more. When the High Council summoned him to lead the war against Earth, he accepted without hesitation. Now he sat in his command chamber, watching the battle footage for the 100th time. His staff stood behind him, waiting for orders. None of them spoke. Play it again, Vorath commanded. The footage restarted. Vorath watched the human ships appear from their hiding places. He watched them attack in formations that made no sense to him. Some ships charged forward recklessly while others hung back. Some fired constantly while others saved their weapons for precise strikes. There was no pattern he could understand. They do not fight like us, Vorath said quietly. No, Admiral, his tactical officer agreed. Our analysts have studied their movements. They cannot predict what the humans will do next. Every engagement is different. Vorath leaned back in his chair. For 3,000 years, galactic warfare had followed certain rules. Ships formed lines. Fleets moved in predictable patterns. Battles were won through superior numbers and firepower. Every species understood this. Every species followed the same basic tactics, except humans. Gather the fleet, Vorath ordered. 3,000 of our best ships. We will crush them with overwhelming force. His officers hurried to obey. Vorath continued watching the footage, his 4 eyes narrowed with concentration. He would not underestimate these creatures again. Lieutenant Ryan Marsh was 26 years old when he became a hero. He never wanted to be one. He just wanted to fly. Ryan grew up in a small town in Ohio, the son of a mechanic and a schoolteacher. He learned to fly crop dusters before he could drive a car. When the military recruited him for the secret fleet, he thought it was the greatest day of his life. He had no idea what was coming. The battle against Vorath's fleet began in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. 3,000 Confederacy ships against 800 human vessels. The aliens expected an easy victory. They got something else entirely. Ryan flew a small fighter craft, part of a squadron assigned to protect the larger warships. When the battle started, everything became chaos. Energy beams flashed through space. Ships exploded in brilliant fireballs. The communication channels filled with screaming voices. Ryan's squadron leader was killed in the first 5 minutes. So was his second command. Suddenly, Ryan was the highest-ranking pilot left. "Everyone follow me," he shouted into his radio. "We are going for their command ship." It was a crazy plan. The Confederacy command ship was massive, protected by dozens of escort vessels. No small fighter should be able to get close. But Ryan had noticed something. The aliens moved in predictable patterns. If he timed it right, he could slip through their defenses. He pushed his engines to maximum speed. Behind him, 7 other fighters followed. Ahead, the command ship loomed like a metal mountain. The alien gunners tried to track him, but Ryan moved too fast. He dodged between energy beams, spinning and rolling his fighter in ways that would make most pilots sick. His squadron stayed with him, trusting him completely. They reached the command ship's weak point, a small gap in its shields where the main antenna connected. Ryan fired everything he had. His missiles struck true, punching through the armor and into the ship's core systems. The command ship went dark. Without its coordination, the Confederacy fleet fell into confusion. Human warships pressed their advantage, cutting through the disorganized enemy like wolves through sheep. When the battle ended, humanity had lost 200 ships. The Confederacy had lost 2,800. On Earth, Dr. Angela Price studied the reports with growing fascination. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life and behavior. For years, she had tried to understand how other species thought. Now, watching humanity win battle after battle, she finally understood something important. "They cannot predict us," she told Admiral Carter during their briefing. "Every other species in the galaxy fights the same way. They have rules, traditions, patterns developed over thousands of years. We have none of that. We adapt," Carter said. "More than that. We take risks that no rational species would take. We sacrifice ourselves for each other in ways they cannot comprehend. To them, war is mathematics. To us, war is personal." Carter thought about the young pilots who had given their lives in the asteroid belt. He thought about the soldiers training for ground combat, ready to fight and die for people they would never meet. "That is why we will win," he said quietly far across the galaxy. Admiral Vorath received the reports of his devastating loss. He sat alone in his chamber for a long time, staring at nothing. Then he called for his intelligence officers. "Tell me everything about these humans," he ordered. "Their history, their culture, their wars. I want to understand how they think." The officers brought him files and footage. Vorath watched recordings of human battles throughout their history. He saw soldiers charging into certain death. He saw medics running toward danger to save wounded comrades. He saw prisoners of war refusing to break under torture. He watched one particular video several times. A human soldier, badly wounded, crawling toward his fallen friend. Enemies surrounded him. He had no chance of survival. But he kept crawling, kept fighting until his last breath. "They do not fight to survive," Vorath said to his empty chamber. "They fight to win." There is a difference. He understood now why the Confederacy was losing. They had started a war with a species that did not know how to give up. A species that would rather die than surrender. A species that turned fear into fuel and despair into determination. Vorath had conquered many worlds in his long life. But he had never faced an enemy like this. For the first time, he wondered if victory was even possible. 6 months into the war, the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity was no longer the weak species from the edge of known space. They had become something else entirely. They had become a force that made ancient empires tremble. The Confederacy had lost 12 major battles. Their fleet was reduced to half its original strength. Worse still, cracks were appearing in their alliance. 3 species had already withdrawn from the war, claiming they needed to protect their homeworlds. Others were asking difficult questions about why they had started this conflict in the first place. But High Arbiter Xerax refused to surrender. He sat in his council chamber, surrounded by his most loyal generals, planning one final assault. "We will send everything," he declared. 10,000 ships. Every vessel we have left. We will strike Earth directly and end this war. His generals exchanged nervous glances. 10,000 ships was their entire remaining fleet. If they lost this battle, the Confederacy would have nothing left. "High Arbiter," one general said carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiations. The humans have shown themselves willing to talk." Xerax slammed his fist on the table. "We do not negotiate with lesser species. We conquer them. This is the way it has always been." The general fell silent. He knew better than to argue with the High Arbiter when his mind was set. Far from this chamber, other conversations were happening in secret. Ambassador Derek Simmons sat across from Zaraven in a hidden room on a neutral station. Zaraven was a diplomat from the Volari, a species known for their wisdom and their distaste for violence. She had contacted humanity through back channels, seeking a way to end the war. "My people want peace," she said. Her voice was soft and musical, typical of her kind. "We joined the Confederacy out of fear, not loyalty. Many other species feel the same way." Derek nodded slowly. He was a patient man who had spent 30 years as a diplomat. He understood that wars were not only won on battlefields. Sometimes, the most important victories happened in quiet rooms like this one. "What do you propose?" he asked. "Help us break away from the Confederacy. Protect us from Xerax's revenge. In return, we will share intelligence about his plans. We will help convince other species to leave the Alliance." Derek considered her words carefully. This was exactly what humanity needed. Not just military victory, but allies. Friends in a galaxy that had tried to destroy them. "I will take your proposal to my superiors," he said. "But I believe they will agree." Zaraven's eyes brightened with hope. "You would truly accept us? After we participated in the declaration of war against you?" Derek smiled gently. "We know the difference between enemies and victims. Your people were forced into this. We do not hold that against you." For a moment, Zaraven could not speak. In all her years of dealing with other species, she had never met one that offered forgiveness so freely. Perhaps the humans truly were different. While diplomats talked, soldiers fought and died. Sergeant Heather Blake led her squad across the rocky surface of a Confederacy moonbase. The gravity was weak, making every step feel strange. Enemy fire lit up the darkness around them. "Keep moving," Heather shouted. "We stop, we die." Her squad was down to 8 soldiers from the original 20. They had been fighting for 6 hours straight, pushing deeper into enemy territory. Their mission was simple but deadly. Destroy the communication array that coordinated Confederacy defenses in this sector. Heather was 34 years old with short brown hair and a scar across her left cheek from a battle 3 months ago. She had been a school teacher before the war. Now she was something else. Something harder. They reached the communication array just as enemy reinforcements arrived. Heather made a quick decision. "Set the charges," she ordered. "I will hold them off." "Sergeant, there are too many," one of her soldiers protested. "I know. That is why you need to go. Get to the extraction point. I will catch up." She was lying and they all knew it. But they followed her orders anyway, disappearing into the darkness with the explosives. Heather turned to face the approaching enemy. She held her position for 7 minutes. 7 minutes of constant firing, constant movement, constant pain as enemy shots grazed her armor. 7 minutes that gave her squad enough time to complete the mission and escape. When reinforcements from the fleet finally reached her, Heather was still alive. Barely, She had taken 4 direct hits but refused to fall. The medics found her sitting against a rock, her weapon still pointed at the enemy position. "Is the array destroyed?" she asked weakly. "Yes, Sergeant." Mission accomplished. Heather smiled and finally allowed herself to close her eyes. She had done her duty. Back on Earth, Admiral Carter received 2 pieces of information at the same time. First, Zaraven's people had officially broken from the Confederacy and requested human protection. Second, Zyrax's final fleet of 10,000 ships was preparing to launch toward Earth. Carter looked at Dr. Lisa Morgan. She was already bringing up displays showing the positions of human forces. They had rebuilt their losses, but they still only had 3,000 ships. Not enough to face 10,000. "It is time," Carter said quietly. Lisa nodded and entered a code into her console. Across the galaxy, something woke up. Project Prometheus was humanity's final secret. For 50 years, small unmanned ships had traveled through the galaxy, planting weapon satellites in hidden locations. Near Confederacy homeworlds, along major trade routes, around strategic resources. In total, humanity had placed 12,000 weapons platforms throughout the galaxy. Each one was small and hard to detect. Together, they represented more firepower than any fleet in history. Carter opened a communication channel to the entire Confederacy. Zyrax's face appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes filled with hatred. "Your fleet approaches Earth," Carter said calmly, "but our weapons already orbit your homes. Continue this war, and there will be no winners. Only survivors." Zyrax's face went pale. "You are bluffing, am I?" Carter nodded to Lisa. She pressed a button. Across the galaxy, 100 weapons platforms activated their targeting systems. They did not fire. They simply let the Confederacy know they were there. On 100 different worlds, alarms began to scream. Civilians ran for shelters. Leaders demanded explanations. The entire Confederacy realized in one horrible moment that humanity could destroy them all. "We do not want to use these weapons," Carter continued. "We never did. But we will if we must. The choice is yours, High Arbiter. War or peace. Destruction or survival. Choose." The channel went silent. Carter waited. Everyone waited. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Confederacy fleet stopped. 10,000 ships hung motionless in space, their engines cooling, their weapons powering down. High Arbiter Zyrax sat alone in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed human weapons surrounding every world he had sworn to protect. For 300 years, Zyrax had believed in the superiority of the Confederacy. He had believed that older species had the right to control younger ones. He had believed that power meant taking what you wanted and crushing anyone who resisted. Now, facing the possibility of total destruction, he finally understood how wrong he had been. "Send a message to Earth," he said quietly. His voice sounded tired, old. "Tell them we accept negotiations." His officers obeyed without question. There was nothing else to say. The peace summit took place on Terminus 9, the same station where the war had been declared 6 months earlier. The Great Hall looked different now. Instead of 47 hostile delegations, there were representatives from both sides sitting together. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Ambassador Kevin Shaw led the human delegation. He walked into the hall with the same calm confidence he had shown when accepting the declaration of war. Beside him were Admiral Daniel Carter, Dr. Lisa Morgan, Captain Nathan Cole, and Zaraven, who had become humanity's closest alien ally. High Arbiter Zyrax waited at the central platform. His proud posture had changed. His shoulders sagged slightly. His 4 eyes carried a weariness that had not been there before. War had cost him much, and he knew more costs were yet to come. "Let us begin," Shaw said simply. Everyone expected humanity to demand surrender. They expected harsh terms, heavy punishments, perhaps even the conquest of Confederacy worlds. It was what any other species would have done. It was what the Confederacy had planned to do to Earth, but Kevin Shaw surprised them all. "We do not want your submission," he announced. "We do not want to rule your worlds or enslave your people. That is not who we are." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Xyrax leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Ben, what do you want?" he asked. Shaw looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every delegate. "We want what we have always wanted. A seat at the table. The right to exist as equals in this galaxy. The chance to share what we have and learn from what you know." He paused, letting his words sink in. Humanity did not ask for this war. We prepared for it because we knew it was coming. For 87 years we built ships and weapons, knowing that someday we would have to defend ourselves. But defense was always our goal. Not conquest. Not revenge. Admiral Carter stepped forward. "We could destroy your homeworlds. Our weapons are in position. One command, and this war ends in fire and ash." He let the threat hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "But that is not victory. That is just death. We want something better." Dr. Lisa Morgan spoke next. "Human science has made advances in medicine that could save billions of lives across the galaxy. Cures for diseases that have plagued your species for millennia. We are willing to share this knowledge freely." Captain Nathan Cole added, "Human ships have explored regions of space that no Confederacy vessel has ever reached. We have found resources, habitable worlds, wonders that should be shared by all species. We propose joint exploration, not competition." Zaraven stepped forward last. Her gentle voice carried through the silent hall. "I have seen what humanity offers. They took my people in when we fled the Confederacy. They protected us without asking for anything in return. They treated us not as lesser beings, but as friends. This is not the behavior of conquerors. This is the behavior of partners." High Arbiter Xyrax sat very still for a long time. He had ruled the Confederacy for 200 years. He had made decisions that affected trillions of lives. But this moment felt heavier than all the others combined. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why would you show mercy to those who tried to enslave you?" Admiral Carter answered, "Because we are not fighting to rule the galaxy. We are fighting for the right to live in it. There is a difference." Xyrax closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The pride was still there, but it had been joined by something else. Respect. "I accept your terms," he said. "Let there be peace between our peoples." The hall erupted in cheers. Delegates who had been enemies hours ago shook hands and embraced. For the first time in galactic history, a war had ended not with conquest, but with cooperation. The Terra Accords were signed 3 days later. Humanity became a founding member of a new galactic alliance, one built on equality and mutual benefit rather than domination. The old Confederacy dissolved, replaced by something better. In the months that followed, human doctors traveled to alien worlds, bringing cures and hope. Human explorers joined alien scientists on missions to uncharted space. Human teachers opened schools where young beings of all species learned together. And on Earth, life returned to normal. Children played in parks. Families gathered for meals. People went to work and came home to those they loved. The war had changed many things, but the human spirit remained the same. Admiral Daniel Carter retired to a small house in Colorado, near his grandchildren. He spent his days fishing and telling stories about the old times. When people asked him about the war, he always said the same thing. "We did not win because we were stronger. We won because we knew what we were fighting for." Ambassador Kevin Shaw returned to diplomacy, helping to build bridges between humanity and their new allies. He often thought about that first day in the Great Hall when he had accepted the declaration of war with a smile. They thought we were weak, he told his staff once. They thought our smile was ignorance. They did not understand that it was confidence. We knew who we were. We knew what we could do. And we knew that someday they would understand too. Dr. Lisa Morgan continued her research, now working with alien scientists on projects that would benefit all species. She never forgot the years of secret work, the sacrifices made by so many. But she also looked forward to a future where such secrets would no longer be necessary. Captain Nathan Cole kept flying. The stars called to him, just as they always had. But now he flew with alien squadrons at his side, exploring the unknown together. And somewhere in the galaxy, a young child of an alien species asked her parent a question. What are humans like? The parent thought for a moment before answering. They are strange creatures, small and fragile compared to many species. But they have something special inside them, something that makes them strong in ways that are hard to explain. What is it? The child asked. Hope, the parent said. They never stop hoping. They never stop fighting for a better tomorrow. That is what makes them human. The child nodded and looked up at the stars, wondering what adventures awaited out there. And far away, Earth turned slowly in space. A small blue world that had faced the entire galaxy and smiled. Not because it saw war, but because it had always believed in peace. The galaxy had announced war. But humanity had answered with something stronger. They had answered with themselves.